Welcome to Unscripted Pivots, where we dive deep into the stories and strategies that shape personal transformation for WTF. That's Women That Flourish. I am your host, Danielle Sproles, also affectionately known as the WTF Lady. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a very special guest. We have Natasha Davidson, a distinguished B.E.S.T practitioner and wellness coach at Heart Rooted Health. Natasha is not just a wellness coach, she's a pioneer in the field of energy medicine, combining the Bio-Energetic Synchronization Technique, or B.E.S.T, with cutting-edge science and spirituality. This powerful technique addresses the root causes of physical, mental, and emotional misalignments, enabling the body to return to its full healing potential. Through her work at Heart Rooted Health, Natasha helps individuals release mental blocks, trauma, and unresolved emotional stress. The result? Renewed clarity, freedom, and vibrant health. Beyond individual sessions, Natasha leads transformative workshops and group sessions, teaching others how to access their inner wisdom through embodiment practices like breathwork, and meditation. Today, Natasha is here to share her insights on mastering energy for an authentic, energy-rich life. So get ready to be empowered to activate your full potential as we explore the profound impact of B.E.S.T and energy medicine with Natasha Davidson. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you. I often tell the listeners how I met whoever it is that I'm chatting with. And so for you guys out there, I wanted you to know that I met her when I recently joined the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. And I walked into my first event, which happened to be a speed networking event. And when I tell you speed, capital S, okay, we were like in little groups of maybe 4 or 5 and having 5 or 6 minutes at each table. And it was nuts. So just picture the chaos of that. And even though there was a whole lot of like networking and happy confusion, I'll call it, going on, I spotted her. And just for the short interaction we had at that event, I knew she was somebody I wanted to get better to know. And so that's what I'm doing. And I want to share her and all that her work brings to the table on this podcast. So Natasha, tell us a little bit about, your journey and how you came across B.E.S.T and energy medicine in general.
Yeah. So, I lived my life always following what I was supposed to do, right? So,
Sounds familiar.
get the good grades,
Yeah.
go to the good university, get the good job, make the good money, right? And I wasn't fulfilled. And I decided if I'm going to be working, I want to do something I'm passionate about. I left the corporate world where I was really stuck in my head and was on this search for what does health mean. I first started down the path of, I love health and nutrition, I'm going to explore that, and thought that they would tell me what the perfect diet was, which really there is no perfect diet.
No.
And then I began this search for, okay, what does healing mean? Why do some people heal and other people don't? And I came across this book called Radical Remission. And this woman studied cancer patients who spontaneously healed.
Wow.
And yes, so she interviewed 100 patients and the practitioners, and then went on to study 1,000 of them and came up with these 9 key factors. And the 9 key factors, 2 of them maybe a doctor would recommend, like change your diet and, use herbs and supplements. But the rest of them, the 7 remaining key factors that were what was in common with all of this spontaneous healing, had to do with spiritual. They were spiritual or emotional in nature, right? And the one that stood out to me was take care of unresolved emotions, release, energy blockages, all of that, because I later on learned that probably like 95% of disease is due to unresolved emotion.
And I've heard the same, and it's wonderful to know that this has really been coming to the forefront for the last several years, right? Because certainly when I was raised, it was like if it didn't physically present, it didn't exist. And if they couldn't physically cure it or identify it, it probably was just something that was going to pass or was in your head. And it is so much deeper than that. And for those of us who can have a growth mindset, I'll say, and we'll like explore beyond the traditional path of just regular medicine. I don't know, we'd call it regular medicine, but like like the typical approach, there is so much healing in there. But I want to just take a moment because we just kind of breezed through the fact that you were in corporate America, you're doing all those things. Could you just share with us what were you doing before you were doing this? And
Ah,
really what catapulted you, because I want to do a deep dive into the best practice, but I love to know what the unscripted pivot was that really made you do it. So you went to school, and what were you doing in corporate America?
yeah. So I studied economics and
Okay.
got into finance. I was selling retirement plans, um, and wasn't necessarily fulfilled. Felt like there was a greater calling for me. I kind of bounced around a little bit in sales. I thought maybe selling energy efficiency projects would be more aligned with me. So I tried that for a while and just didn't feel the fulfillment that I was searching for.
Yeah, there was no
And
calling. Okay, I get
there
it.
was no
And
calling. Yeah.
yeah, and I you look, I mean, I've personally experienced something along the lines of what you're just sharing with us now. And even though retirement plans or, solar related or the other thing that you were mentioning, these are things that people actually need and they have value, but you didn't feel that you were really going to be the one that was going to be a proponent in that space. And so you wanted something that was going to offer something more meaningful and in depth. That was right for you to sell. And here this comes. Were you sick or anything? Was there somebody in your family that, was it in the transition itself that you had some physical ailments? Sometimes we present with that stress, especially during a period of transition, that you thought, I've got to get well and I'll figure out. And then, is this how this world opened up?
Yeah, so the first thing that happened actually was my son became very defiant because I was a single mom traveling on airplanes all the time
Okay.
and was kind of losing my relationship with my kids. So my son became very defiant, and I was like, he needs to go to therapy. And then I realized maybe therapy can benefit me too. And and that's what helped me really realize, like, I'm just doing this job to get a paycheck. I'm not really happy doing it. I'm just trying to support my family here. Um, and then when the therapist said, you have an emergency fund, what if that's an opportunity fund? What if you could use that to really,
I
you know,
love it. I
yes,
love it,
exactly.
right? So think about
Yeah.
that for our listeners out here. A couple of things. I think that a lot of us, because this is predominantly a female audience that we have on this podcast, and many of us are mothers. I do know that for a fact. And so if you can relate to defiant children, there you have it. And then we look at ourselves and we look at what the workload is and the trajectory of our career. And I too was on a plane like constantly, and just like maybe like the family suffering from just the structure of the job and the calling. And that is really, really great that you went and you did a further exploration. But I wanted to just take a moment and kind of highlight, like, what were you doing? And a lot of times people are leaving finance. So I'm not at all surprised by that. And I support you in that decision. So you ended up taking the opportunity fund. Like, what a cool way to look at that, right? So the money that we saved for an emergency, who's to say this is not, but let's not call it an emergency because that kind of sounds dire. We're going to call it an opportunity. That is so big. Right? What a positive way and perspective to consider that extra money. So you took the
Yes.
opportunity fund and you took a departure from what you were doing and you began the exploration of this. Now, what did this lead you to the B.E.S.T practice?
Yeah. So once I became aware that pressed emotions are really what's causing disease in the body, I discovered a teacher in energy medicine called Dr. Sue Morter. And I saw her on one of those online health summits, and she really resonated with me. And she was the one that said that she was bridging cutting edge science with ancient technology, ancient spirituality, right? So she was bringing the worlds
Mhm.
of Eastern medicine and Western medicine together because she was a chiropractor, and her father was actually the one who was the pioneer of energy medicine and created the B.E.S.T technique.
Okay.
So, so when I discovered her, it felt like all of the puzzle pieces just came together. All of my questions were answered in regards to why do some people heal and other people don't. And what it really comes down to is these suppressed emotions. And I think that growing up in our society, I mean, I learned to suppress emotions, and
Oh, yeah.
that's how we cope, right?
Absolutely.
So, since we're a little girl, our subconscious is formed, and it's formed, and we create these neurological patterns in order to create ease on our lives, right? It's not just coping, it's like trying to create ease in our lives. And so, if we get yelled at for something, then we're not going to do that anymore. But when we're an adult, that no longer serves us, right? So in my example, I didn't feel like I had a voice growing up.
Yeah.
And then as an adult, it's like, okay, I don't need that stored memory pattern anymore to keep quiet so that someone doesn't yell at me. Now I can use my voice. Now I can share what I've learned and be able to help and inspire women.
Such an important point, such an important point. But just the awareness that this, in fact, is the case, right? That we learn to suppress our voices, and then how are we going to do about it, right? Just willing to change, just that awareness and the idea that we want to make that shift. It doesn't just automatically happen. Is this where your practice comes in? And I remember when I met you and you came up to me and used some big words, because BEST, I want to remind everybody, stands for Bio-Energetic Synchronization Technique. And that's like spilling from Natasha's lips. And I'm thinking, is she a doctor? Is she a chemist? Like, well, what is this? Right. And then when you dial it down, I'm like, okay, we've got a spiritual component. And I think that's why I was really drawn to you, because I think that healing, there's so much involved in healing. And then that awareness that we no longer have to be that suppressed little girl, and that we have a voice that we can use, is big and beautiful. But to get from there to here, that's not an overnight matter. And it requires the guidance and techniques that you offer to actually accomplish that shift. That's a big shift. We can't just will that shift. Oh, now I get it. That's the way it'll be, right? Because you literally have to undo to then do, right? So,
Yes, yes. And with the BEST technique, yes, I'm able to help people release unresolved emotions, but my goal is also to help empower women with their own self-healing. So a lot of the technique is also about bringing awareness to where in your body or where in your energy field you are not yet awake to. So there are parts of us that are still dormant, still asleep.
yeah.
And our body is signaling to us all the time where we can bring awareness to, right? So physical pain is just our body talking to us, right? And my teacher, Dr. Sue Morter, says the soul speaks to the body and the body speaks to the mind, but the mind's not always listening. So it's about getting the mind to listen to the body, because there's a language that the body's trying to reveal of where you can awaken to more of who you are.
Okay. So that really goes to the impact of the BEST technique, right? And how it can address mental and emotional challenges faced by women. But what are some of the physical ailments that you see in your clients? And then walk us through like what a session with you looks like.
Yeah, there are all sorts of physical ailments. We are energy. Everything is energy, right?
Yes.
And our physical body is the compressed version of us, right? We have this energy field all around us, and the physical body is the density of it. And so if anything is going on in our physical body, it happens energetically first. So what I'm able to do is find out what is that vibrational frequency that is creating this harmony in the body. And so with that, then I'm able to bring awareness to that. And when we bring awareness to something and we, in a sense, merge with it, then we're eliminating the separation, the resistance, all of that. And then we bring harmony. And then energy gets flowing through our system again. So in a session with someone, whether it's in person or on Zoom, what I have them do is lay down so that they're comfortable. and then start them out with some breathing to really get them out of their head and into their body. And then during the technique, I'm able to I'm able to pinpoint with precision exactly what the vibrational frequency is, what that stored memory pattern is that created the disharmony in the first place. So it's showing up in their physical body somehow. And
So what
the
type of things
body,
are you witnessing though, Natasha? Like let's explain to me when you're doing this, especially if you're doing it virtually, what are the signs that tell you the information that you need to pinpoint in order to begin a healing process?
yeah. So even if someone comes to me with a physical complaint, it could be that there's something else going on energetically that's in priority that their body is trying to heal.
Hmm.
So, for example, a gentleman came to me with left knee pain. And he was like, I would love for you to help me with this left knee pain, right? But
Yeah.
it turns out that he was experiencing disharmony with his HOA in his neighborhood.
Okay.
And that was what his body felt like was creating the most disharmony for him that he needed to resolve first before the body could even address the knee pain.
Okay,
So
did you
we
say the
had,
left knee? Did you say the
yeah,
left knee?
it
No, the
was the
reason I
left
asked you
knee.
that, okay, so when I mean, I grew up, my mom, um, she was open to a lot of things and she just was like before her time, right? Because the things that she would share, but one of the things she'd always say, the left side's female, Danielle, and the right side's male. And whenever something like would hurt on the left side, she goes, okay, so what female are you not getting along with or who are you struggling with? And, I just remember as a child, her talking to me like that. So that's why I was just asking you. So I'm wondering, right away it created a visual. I wonder if the HOA leader of the charge there was a female that was, he was not really, getting along with. But anyway, I digress. But
Yes.
that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking about, to tell you the truth, because we just
Yeah.
go into something of the outside, thinking of the box and having that growth mindset. So that's really cool. So then, how was it that you attended to his physical discomfort, and then are you doing therapy with him? Like, is this a conversational thing too, to walk him through the process of the letting go, perhaps, so that he wouldn't be retaining this physical ailment as a result of his anger and stress?
Yes. So the first thing that happens is I energetically release that stored memory pattern and I'm updating the neural pathways in the brain. So someone can come to me and not even speak the same language, but their body is speaking to me what the energy pattern is that needs to be resolved. And then after that, I'm happy to do any sort of coaching in regards to any situation someone is in. But they will find that once we release that stuck energy, then that situation tends to resolve itself on its own. And it's the same with the physical body, right? So
Hmm.
once we take care of that stuck energy, then the physical body tends to resolve on its own. And everyone is unique. Every body is unique. And I never know exactly, how long it's going to take, what it's going to take, how many layers do we have to get through to get down to the root cause. But I do know that it's affecting change. And as a byproduct, their body will heal.
So if you're meeting with a client and you're in person, they're lying on a table. I'm trying to visualize this and also send a visual to the audience. And are you doing something that, for all intents and purposes, would appear to be similar to Reiki, but it's not? Are your hands going above them so you can kind of absorb, right, that energy field? Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, great question. So through muscle testing, I'm asking the body yes and no questions. So the
Okay.
body will reveal to me, for example, there'll be a strong arm if it's a truth, if it's a yes, or the arm will go weak if it's not true, if it's a no.
Hmm.
Um, and so the body responds when I'm asking yes and no questions. So what I'm actually doing is going through a flow chart, if you will, with all of these different questions to be able to pinpoint where there is disharmony. Is it going to be in their mental body, in their emotional body, in their physical body, spiritually? Sometimes I'm working with the chakra system.
Yeah.
So So I'm able to identify there's 5 keys to a stored memory pattern. So it'll let me know what the emotion that's tied to it. It'll let me know the eye position, the part of the brain. There's a dominant frequency number, and then there is a breathing pattern. So all of these 5 things, that's what B.E.S.T stands for, the Bio-Energetic Synchronization Technique, is when we do all 5 of these at the same time, then it updates the neurocircuitry of the brain and creates that new stored memory pattern.
That's absolutely amazing. And that's not something I've never even heard of this prior to talking to you, or at least just not the terminology. Practices maybe a little bit along those lines, but I'm very excited to take a session with you. And we certainly everybody has a little healing to do. There's no doubt about it, and we all have. I don't know if we would use the word trauma for everybody, although I personally experienced trauma growing up for sure, and I'm sure a lot of that is still stored. Even though I have been on a path of wellness for a long time now, and I'm just more cognizant of why I make choices or have feelings that I feel today. And there's a saying that what is historical, what is hysterical rather, is historical. And you could look
Mm.
back at to why it is that you're, having a certain reaction or experience, because it's usually based on the path. So, what would you say, Natasha, to people that are skeptical about this? Because you know, it's a real scientific method, but it's not one that has been mainstream, for lack of a better word, for a long time. And what is it that you would say to somebody who's skeptical about that?
Yeah, so I think that this is going to be more mainstream. I
Mm.
think people are going to really realize that Western medicine serves a purpose for, acute emergencies. But when it comes to disease and disharmony in the body, people are people are searching, right? So
Oh,
like I
yes.
was searching,
Hmm.
people are searching, right? And so I think this is going to become more and more mainstream. Also, sound healing is a huge component. The Egyptians in the pyramids, they had those sound chambers for healing, right? And so I think we're going to become more and more aware of how people used healing in the past and how effective it was. And it's going to become more and more mainstream. So if someone is skeptical, I understand, because we've only known Western medicine, right? And so this is new, but it's actually ancient.
Exactly. No, again, a great point, right? It's just that there's nothing new about this. This isn't like some fad or some current thing. This is long standing. It just hasn't culturally been something that we've experienced here in the United States, as a matter of regular practice, right? But there is such long, deep history, and there's roots to this. And I
Yes,
always kind of laugh when I learned something new, that just not something that's familiar, right? And it
exactly.
has to do with maybe the cultural upbringing of like some good friends, that came from Japan, and I'm like, is that what you did? But it's just not something that I knew. But even from skincare and all sorts of things, so it really is wonderful to approach things with an open mind, in as much as just because you're not familiar with it doesn't mean it's not real or true or
Yes.
effective. You keep using the word searching, right? And there is, people are on the big search to how can they better, live, perform. We live longer these days. We want to feel our best. And sometimes it's really, it can be frustrating to not understand why it is that our body's reacting a certain way, or why our emotions are off the wall a certain way. And the problems that we think are the problems are typically not the problems. That's true in a lot of areas of life. And I mean, that's true in addiction. I mean, that's what I think about it. People will think like, alcohol is the problem. It's not the bottle. It's the problem is so much deeper than that. Okay. That was just really a symptom of the problem, or a solution to the problem. So when you start to understand that, the more you know, the less you know, right? I love it, because um I embrace curiosity, and I also embrace the fact that I know very, very little. And I would have told you 10 years ago, I knew a lot, and I would have shown you degrees to prove that fact. And today, I literally celebrate how little I know, but how much I want to learn. I want to be a student of life. And that usually comes from a place of transition or even pain, emotional pain where something isn't residing well with you. So you need, to make this change, but you don't necessarily know what that is. Maybe it's not, just the job. It could be a whole host of stuff. But when you begin that journey, it's like you can't unsee what you see. You have to continue forward because staying stuck is even more painful than finding the solution and awareness to what it is that you're experiencing. So I just think this is like the greatest thing. um and I look forward to having a session with you. I would like you to share with our listeners, what are you doing in your workshops? What's on the horizon for you? In the show notes, we're going to have how we can find you, but tell us about your workshops and who comes to those.
Yeah, so I think you touched on something earlier that's really important to mention again. So it's that openness, right?
Yeah.
The openness I've found with my clients who are the most open, they're able to experience the greatest transformation. And another thing you touched on is you were getting at your intuition. So if someone is experiencing pain, their body is starting to talk to them, and the more painful things get, the more we begin to listen, right? And our intuition, especially as women, it's always sharing with us, right? It's like, how do we feel? And so my suggestion would be, follow your intuition. And I think that's a lot of my clients have followed their intuition of like, I'm going to try this out. I'm not really sure how this works exactly, but I'm feeling guided to it. I'm feeling led to try this out, right? And with my workshops, with my clients, I think people are just following their intuition. And so I have in-person clients, either individually or I do workshops in person as well. And then I also do in-person sessions on Zoom and then group B.E.S.T sessions on Zoom. So I offer a free group B.E.S.T session for those that want to try it out and they feel kind of maybe a little bit of hesitancy, like, what is this? Right? It's not something I'm familiar with. And so once a month, I hold a group B.E.S.T session on Zoom. And I have a dear friend that joins me with crystal alchemy sound bowls.
Okay, is that kind
Which
of like a sound bath then?
kind of
Does
like
she
a
go?
sound bath.
Okay.
Yes. So
Yeah.
when I'm working with a group, I'm working with the um, dominant vibrational frequencies where we need to bring harmony to. So it's for the entire group. And what are the vibrational frequencies that everyone could bring harmony to? So it's not individualized, but people get a sense of what it is in a group session.
And, and
Oh,
how
go
many
ahead.
sessions does the average client have with you? So they come to you and they're placing their trust. First, they're trusting their intuitive guide, saying, "I need to look into this because I need change. Something's got to be better than the pain I'm in, whether it's emotional or physical or a combination thereof." And they come to you and they put their trust in you. Is it normally a 1 hour session? Do you see that it's going to be a series of sessions? Because I would almost think like you wouldn't be able to maybe get, there would be an impact for the first session. That's what I would imagine. But then that would be like just the initial scratching the surface, right? That if I really wanted to make a change and institute, long-term shift, I would need more than just one. I mean, that would just seem too easy, too ridiculous. So tell me, what does that look like?
Yeah, so everyone is different and every situation is different. I
Mhm.
have found that people notice a change after just one session, and then there's people that need more than one session, like you were mentioning. So if it's more of like an acute thing that has happened, they only need 1 to 3 sessions. If it's something that is chronic, that's ongoing, that they didn't get there overnight, then there's going to be a lot of layers that we have to peel back to get down to the root cause for them to really get to what their goal is. And it obviously depends on what their goal is. But the beautiful thing is at the end of each treatment, I ask the body, when is the ideal time for the person to return for another session? So it'll let me know it'll either be a number of days, a number of weeks, or a number of months. So typically when someone comes to me, they come more often.
Mm-hmm.
It might be every few days, could be once a week, twice a week. And then what I find is after someone has addressed what they came for, they tend to come just kind of once a month for maintenance as they go through their life.
Yeah, I just speaking with you and looking into what it is you do in preparation for the podcast, I thought I could never just be one and done. I mean, especially, experiencing success right out of the gate, I would want more. I would want more healing, more understanding, and just to invest in myself so that I could, really make institute the changes that your practice offers. This is just it's interesting. And what are the things, if any, that you would tell us that we could do at home that would kind of create some shifts in helping? Would this be breathing techniques? What would you say to the listeners?
Yes. So conscious breathing is the single most transformational tool we have available to us. So even more transformational than meditation alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by really bringing your awareness inside, taking a break from focusing on the outside world, you really get more in tune with what your body is revealing to you, what your intuition is revealing to you, and even just spending a few moments each day by consciously following your breath as it moves in and out of your body is huge. There's also another technique that I recommend. It's called Mula Bandha. It's Sanskrit for root lock. And what you're basically doing is you're just engaging your pelvic floor. So it's kind of like a Kegel.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing is you're
Wait, you
bringing
said that,
all
and
of
already I'm doing it. I just want everybody to know. I'm like, all of a sudden she said Kegel, and I had a flashback, and I'm doing Kegels. That's okay. TMI, TMI. All right, so it's like doing a Kegel.
doing a
I
Kegel.
clenched. You said that, and I automatically clenched.
So what you're doing right there is you're bringing your awareness, like grounding it, rooting it, anchoring it in your body. You're getting out of your head, right? So if you
Yeah.
find that you're like driving on the freeway and someone cuts you off and your instinct is to give them the finger, well, instead you just Mula Bandha, you just do that Kegel and that will go. Like you just bring yourself back in your body and it keeps your mind.
Shift that energy, shift that mind, shift that energy, and yeah, nothing wrong with that. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I have a question. How did you come up with naming your company Heart Rooted Health?
Great question. So, I think that the name found me. I
Oh,
think
okay.
that it just was inspired because this was actually back when I just wanted to be a health coach and I didn't really understand the importance of rooting, right?
Yeah.
And the importance of living from the heart. So I think the name found me, and then I ended up discovering what the name meant.
I love that. I love that. It's almost like it was always there. You just had to find it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, that's terrific. What would you I have one last question. This is just a generic question, but it just comes into my heart right now because of your pivots during the course of like your personal life and your career. What would you tell your 18-year-old self? If you can go back and you could have a conversation, what would you tell her?
First, I would tell her that everything always works out.
Mm,
And
okay.
then I would tell her to always follow her intuition. I think so much of the time we get in our heads and we think that's not logical. And I think that if we drop out of our heads and into our hearts and really tap into following our feelings,
Hmm.
following the energy, I think that's probably the guidance I would give my 18-year-old self is, follow your guidance, follow the energy, don't doubt yourself, and live from your heart.
So empowering. I love that. So I'll have in the show notes, your contact information, but share with us your website name and how they can best reach you. Are you also on Instagram or, just share that.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Heart Rooted Health. That's also the name of my website, heartrootedhealth.com. It's easy to find more information there. Events, this free group best session I do once a month is there.
I'll be there.
Also,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm coming. I'm
one
going to look it up. I'm putting it on the calendar. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Also, if anyone wants to book a session, you can do that there right online. Or if someone has more questions, they can book a 15-minute discovery call with me right on my website. So that's all under heartrootedhealth.com/book now, which is easy to find on my website.
And then
And
in-person sessions occur where?
so I'm doing the in-person sessions, the group sessions I do at Behind the Lids Meditation Studio in Costa Mesa.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started, I'm going to be down in Laguna Hills for in-person sessions. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, she sees I'm smiling because that's close to Newport Beach, and I'm like, I'll be there. Okay, awesome. So we got Laguna, and then again virtually. So your practice and your ability to help others knows no bounds. I mean, the online world is huge. Thank you so much for sharing with us all that you are doing with the BEST practice and for coming on today. It really is encouraging to know that we have people like you who have left, corporate America all buttoned up, finance or sales or whatever, and did the exploration that's going to be a valuable service to people that are, in need of some healing and have to do the deep dive into something beyond traditional medicine, which has its place, but so does this. And in combination, we're on our way. So thank you so much,
Yes.
Natasha. It was great. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you, Danielle. I enjoyed it.